Welcome to the week ahead. My name is Ibrahim Sani. This show is broadcasting live from my house straight to yours. We are trying to unpack the big events that might take place next week that might be of interest to you. Over the next half an hour, I will be going through with you some of the domestic items that might be of interest, including that of the parliament, but more importantly on the events that might take place internationally as well, because all of this is actually quite important for us to discuss. The world doesn't just revolve around us. So let's start with the first story, which is, of course, a possibility of having an interim prime minister. In fact, some have stated that the Deputy Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, might be coming in as an interim Prime Minister. This is, of course, being dispelled by Ismail Sabri. He says that these are just rumors, and he says that the law doesn't even accord for this. In fact, the whole story of how this came about was quite interesting because the embattled Prime Minister, Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, has faced numerous calls to resign, especially after on Friday when the Yang di-Pertuan Agong has issued a statement of rebuke towards how he has carried out his conduct in Parliament through the Law Minister, Datuk Sri Taqiyuddin. So let's hear from Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri about the notion of him being appointed as the interim Prime Minister.
Rumor, kabar angin. Lagipun saya difahamkan di dalam perlembagaan persekutuan tidak ada istilah interim itu tidak ada. PM interim, kerajaan interim itu tidak ada di dalam perlembagaan persekutuan. Ya, jadi itu rumor. Anggap itu sebagai kabar angin saja. Kita tak perlu layanlah apabila ada pihak yang nak memecah belahkan, ya, sebab kalau kita layan ia je lagi teruk. Jadi dan kita tak perlu fall, kita tak perlu terlalu ikut dengan apa yang digembar-gemburkan, ya. Dan tindakan kita sepatutnya adalah untuk mendamaikan. Bagi saya, dalam keadaan hari ini, saya dah kata semalam, tindakan yang paling baik adalah untuk menyejukkan keadaan, mendamaikan keadaan, bukan terlibat dari segi nak melaga-lagakan dan nak memecah belahkan. Ini bukan masa yang sesuai untuk sesiapa saja untuk berpecah.
Yeah, so if there's no interim Prime Minister, therefore the Prime Minister is still Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. And we all know that the Parliament is not to resume its day-to-day affairs tomorrow on 2nd of August. And late on Sunday today, there is also the statement coming in from the Senate or the Dewan Negara also not conducting their meetings tomorrow. So the question now is, if the Parliament is not in session and if the Parliament is not in sitting, when will the Parliament resume? This was asked by a lot of UMNO as well as Bersatu members of Parliament, one of which actually is the Federal Territories Minister, Tan Sri Anwar Musa. He says that the special parliamentary sitting right now was not even supposed to take place. Here he is talking about the issue.
Dalam soal kesihatan ini, dia hanya ada satu peraturan. Dia tidak ada kecuali, sama ada di masjid, di surau, di gereja, di parlimen, di pasar, supermarket, sebab larangan-larangan ini perkara undang-undang, iaitu perkara yang digazetkan sebagai undang-undang. Jadi untuk parlimen baru ni, speaker terpaksa minta kebenaran khas untuk dikecualikan daripada undang-undang. Itu pun satu perkara yang luar biasa lah, kita terpaksa gunakan kaedah itu. Dan DG Kesihatan telah memberikan kelonggaran, tapi kelonggaran itu pun kita langgar juga, ya. Misalnya DG beritahu pilihan pertama tiada sidang langsung, ya. Pilihan kedua, kalau nak bersidang juga, bersidang pendek, jangan duduk terlalu lama sampai pukul 2. Tapi akhirnya masing-masing mendesak nak sambung. Kita ni pembuat undang-undang, tapi kita sendiri pun langgar undang-undang juga kan. Kadang-kadang terlanggar tak sengaja kan. Jadi dia buat sampai 5.5. Tapi apa yang berlakunya ialah kes positif tu bertambah, ya.
Now, of course, he is talking as if other countries have suspended their own parliaments. That is certainly not the case. In fact, try as hard as you may, Malaysia seems to be the only country that has suspended the parliament. And when asked about this item, it was not coming in as satisfactory in terms of how he responded. Since Tan Sri Anwar Musa has referenced the Health Ministry Director General, Dr. Tan Sri Nur Hisham, pardon me, it's worth noting that Tan Sri Nur Hisham has cautioned that a super spreader event is also possible if the special parliamentary sitting continues to proceed. He says that those that have been tested in parliament were found to be highly infectious. It is unclear how these individuals are to be found highly infectious. Are they found to be infected by the Delta variant or not? I'm not too sure. But Tan Sri Nur Hisham added that prior to the sitting, the Health Ministry has already proposed for the sitting, the parliamentary sitting, to be either postponed until the vaccination rate in the Klang Valley hits 40%, or, which was the second option, was for the parliament to proceed with precautions, i.e. with reduced capacity or reduced length, but should immediately be suspended if COVID-19 cases were to be found. And he says that a bipartisan meeting comprising of representatives from both the government and opposition had on July 26 agreed to take the second option. So it seems like, based on what Tan Sri Nur Hisham says, the opposition agrees to not have a parliamentary sitting if positive cases are to be found. According to the government sources, 11 cases out of 1,183 people at parliament have been found positive for COVID-19. And therefore, what DG Hisham is basically alluding to is that the opposition has agreed to suspend the parliament if there are positive cases to be found. Of course, these are very recent developments, as recent as August the 1st Sunday. I'm pretty sure this will invoke some opposition MPs to rebuke these kind of claims. So we will ensure that we will cover the kind of coverage if this so happens, because we all know that in the week ahead, there's going to be a lot of comments coming in from the MPs, particularly from the opposition MPs, on what they think should be done or has to be done following the suspension of the parliamentary sitting. So much so that Lebah Pantai MP Yang Berhormat Fahmi Fadzil, who is also the communications director for PKR, has urged everyone, particularly members of the public, to be calm, but at the same time, they have instituted or expressed intention that they will continue to go to the parliament tomorrow. So that is a key factor when we talk about how the parliamentarians are going to present themselves. Let's move on to the third story. The Public Accounts Committee, or PAC, is insisting on questioning DG Nur Hisham tomorrow, despite the parliamentary sitting being suspended. PAC chairperson Yang Berhormat Wong Koh Wah revealed that Tan Sri Nur Hisham had written to the Dewan Rakyat Secretary advising that the hearing be postponed, i.e. the hearing between PAC and himself be postponed tomorrow due to the discovery of the COVID-19 cases in Parliament. But PAC says no to that. PAC will meet tomorrow and they are demanding for DG Nur Hisham to appear tomorrow in Parliament. Let's play the tape. Oh, sorry, pardon me. So he added that the Dewan Rakyat Secretary had, in a letter, conveyed the recommendation to postpone at around 3:30 p.m. today. And of course, the statement says that the first response of the Dewan Rakyat is actually ridiculous. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. The panel is expected to question them about the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines. And of course, last Thursday, Parliament was put under pressure and therefore was put under lockdown after reports of the COVID-19 cases have re-emerged. And from this, a total of 11 people have come back positive, and opposition MPs have accused the government of using the cases as a ploy to suspend Parliament amid a constitutional crisis. So a lot has been said about the parliament being a constitutional crisis, we shall continue to see what will happen tomorrow, particularly when we have to understand that the conversation that revolves around the parliament is critical. Two things that will be unearthed in the coming weeks. Two things. The first is, how will the explainer from the emergency ordinance from Datuk Sri Taqiyuddin is going to be expressed to the people, particularly in the context of Yang di-Pertuan Agong saying that what has transpired in the parliament is actually untrue, and to some effect indicating that Taqiyuddin has expressed a lie in the Dewan Rakyat. That's the first, that needs to be untangled. And the second is, of course, on the continuity of government. How will the Prime Minister then govern, understanding that he might face a lot of pressure to put forth or to face a motion of no confidence, and this might strike as a big problem for the administration to seek an audience with the king to continue to govern with confidence. So those are the two kind of items that is going to be moved forward when it comes to the week ahead. These two items have to be untangled. Otherwise, this constitutional crisis will continue. We'll go for a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more about some of the issues regarding the vaccine and, of course, the Hartal strike. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. This is The Week Ahead, a show where we talk about the items that will happen next week that might be of interest to you. And of course, we're doing this live. It's a lot more fun doing it live. Let's talk about the fourth story, which is about the Hartal strike, because Hartal Doctor Contract Movement has said that they will strike again with a second walkout should the government fail to come up with a satisfactory solution for contract doctors before the tabling of the budget 2022 that is scheduled to take place October this year. And mind you, October is just 2 to 3 months away. It's not that long for the government to come up with a so-called quote-unquote satisfactory answer. And of course, the grievances that have been aired by the people within the Hartal Doctor Contract is now saying that a second walkout might be possible because this is coming after the Health Minister, Datuk Sri Dr. Adam Baba, promised that the government will look into the matter, but it would require at least 2 years. So the timeline is a problem here. Adam Baba says that this problem needs to be resolved within 2 years. Hartal Contract Doctor says, no, resolve it within 2 months, or else there will be a second walkout. So here is the comment coming in from the movement's spokesperson, Dr. Mustafa Kamal, on the issue.
The movement's spokesperson, Dr. Mustafa Kamal, said that 2 years is too long. But considering the current political situation and instability in the country, he said the movement agrees to give the government some time before coming up with a solution. In the meantime, he said the movement is now planning to form a union for junior doctors and are currently engaging with the Malaysian Trades Union Congress and Congress of Unions of Employees in the Public and Civil Services to ensure their voices will be heard. On Monday, a group of contract doctors walked out of hospitals nationwide to push for reform of the public health contract employment system.
So of all people, doctors, of all time, pandemic, I think this is a key factor that we need to talk about. The story here is not about Malaysia not or having an abundance of doctors. That's clearly not the case when you look at the WHO persons per doctor ratio. Malaysia is still far behind the recommended ratio that the WHO is saying. So Malaysians do not have an abundance of doctors. Malaysia needs more doctors. But the issue here is the budget allocation to hire doctors have been maxed out. That is the issue. So what the doctors are trying to say here is that if you can't find a solution of increasing the budget allocation to hire more doctors under permanent contract, you're not going to be able to resolve this on a systemic issue. So if you can see this from a larger scope, it's not just about the doctors on contract. It's about labor laws. It's about the ability for employer and employee to have an amicable solution. It's about tribunal courts. It's about how we move ahead as a nation, as a capitalistic nation, mind you, on how we can hire better people, particularly in the private and public sector. So it's not just about doctors that Dr. Hartal is fighting for. It's about all the contractual employees that the government is hiring right now under the various ministries. So it's a big issue, an issue that cannot wait for 2 years. I agree, it cannot wait for 2 years. But of all the other things that needs to be resolved, all the other things that has to be resolved in a timely fashion, my humble opinion is doctors must come first because it is a pandemic. Who is to sort out the pandemic if not for the doctors? And it's key for the doctors to be resolved right now. So we're going to see whether or not there's a development from the Ministry of Health when it comes to resolving this issue with the doctors in the first week of August. Let's move on to the second story, the fifth story. There is an urgent need for politicians, MPs, and civil servants holding positions to declare their assets. In making that call, the Centre to Combat Corruption and Cronyism, C4, mooted the proposal for an Asset Declaration Act that will make it compulsory for this group to declare their assets, incomes, and other relevant financial information. Here to discuss the act would entail as well would be the C4 founding director, Cynthia Gabriel.
So this is actually very critical to the fight against corruption, because right now we do not have a mandated system or a legislation to actually track illicit enrichment of politicians in power, as well as civil servants that hold very high positions and actually are responsible for administering public funds. So why is this important? We have seen for the last number of years a shocking number of politicians, ministers, and even a former prime minister involved in unexplained wealth, living beyond their means, and outrightly abusing their powers for personal gain. So it is really quite critical that we have a legislation in place now.
Cynthia adds that an Asset Declaration Act should be transparent and be able to hold those in power accountable by tracking their illicit enrichment.
Why is this legislation really important? It will actually give enforcement powers to the agencies involved. So there's legislative power now to actually look at better asset disclosure system, one that is transparent, one that is accountable, and definitely able to track illicit enrichment. And what I mean by illicit enrichment is there's nothing wrong with politicians who are rich coming into the system, but they need to declare their wealth before they actually enter the system, so that after 5 years, there will be a system that can track exponential wealth, that they did not use taxpayers' money and public funds to actually enrich themselves. And this is the whole purpose of an asset declaration system.
With the general election looming, Cynthia stressed the crucial need for the Asset Declaration Act to be in place so the rakyat would have confidence in elected candidates.
This is real. This is not something imagined. And there is a real need for civil servants with very high positions and who hold public funds, as well as politicians and MPs to declare their assets, including family members. So I would say that for this government, who actually came in without an elected mandate, is all the more important that they live out the commitment in the National Anti-Corruption Plan, which means that this legislation needs to come in to focus with urgency, and more so because the next general elections is looming, and we will want to ensure that the rakyat, the people, actually know what kind of candidates are being put up by political parties to win the elections, and that these candidates are clean. These candidates believe in some kind of integrity mechanism, that they have principles that actually value the fact that they need to be accountable to the system.
So we will see whether or not the suggestion by C4 is going to be discussed further next week. It's also interesting to see policy issues being discussed, not just events that are going to take place. But that is something that I will definitely keep an eye out for. We'll go for a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more about the Olympics. You are watching The Week Ahead. I am Ibrahim Sani. Our sixth story that might be of interest to you is, of course, Japan and Tokyo, because Japan expanded its COVID-19 state of emergency to 4 more areas following record spikes of infections. Who knew? I mean, it is the Olympics only, where thousands of people from around the world come to that place. But anyway, the Prime Minister, Yoshihide Suge, declared today that Saitama, Kanagawa, Chiba, and Osaka will face emergency restrictions effective tomorrow until August 31st. Go ahead.
Meanwhile, emergency measures already in place in Tokyo and the southern island of Okinawa will also be extended until the end of August, after the Olympics and well into the Paralympics, which start on August 24th. Japan's daily total of COVID-19 cases topped 10,000 for the first time on Thursday, with Tokyo experiencing surging infections. The National Institute of Infectious Diseases has estimated that the highly contagious Delta variant is now responsible for about 70% of infection cases in the metropolitan area. The Tokyo Olympics Organizing Committee, on the other hand, announced on Thursday that 24 Olympic-related personnel, including 3 athletes, have tested positive for COVID-19 in the past day. Since July 1st, the number of Olympic-related confirmed cases has reached 193.
So it's important for us to take note that the Olympics is still ongoing, and of course the cases within Japan will continue to rise inadvertently, and of course they are a bit slow in vaccination. So, well, that is a story that's going to continue to captivate the minds next week. Our final story isn't so much something that you can take action of or you can think about doing for next week. It's just a heartwarming story of how our Olympian Dabita Sabri may have missed out on a medal position coming in fourth, but her efforts and all the Malaysian contingent efforts continue to inspire many of us. Here's a clip of her interview with Astro Arena journalist Adam Zamri and Dabita just now. Enjoy.
Nangis bukan sebab I sedih tak menang, but I'm really proud of myself because this past few months is memang hard untuk saya. Sebab I lost myself before Olympic, and then I lost my confidence. Everything was, for me, went downhill lah. So my confidence dah hilang, everything. Even in fact, like few weeks before datang Olympic pun, I macam dah not sure about myself. So I dapat perform and dapat nombor 4. I'm very proud of myself.
Jika boleh dikongsikan apa kepayahan yang awak sendiri rasa perik yang awak tanggung sebelum nak datang ke Tokyo, yang awak boleh kongsikan kepada rakyat Malaysia?
Yeah, it's lockdown. Malaysia lockdown kan, because kita dah tak hidup macam dulu, where you can go home, you can have fun with your friends and everything, and then kita orang just spend in the sports bubble, just training sampai otak I dah, like, I think all of us dah stress sangat-sangat dah, until I dah tak boleh cope with everything. I miss my family, I miss to hang out with them, I miss untuk lepak, tapi I tak dapat semua benda tu. So like if you video call pun semua benda takkan terlepas kan, so it's not the same. So itu yang buat I macam lost myself.
Tempat keempat di Olimpik, lebih baik di Rio, apa yang awak boleh katakan?
I'm just proud of myself, and my coach is I'm really happy he's beside me, because every time I competition dia ada kat sebelah I, which is he makes me calm. Yeah. For me, dia tulang belakang I lah. He's the success, the man behind me lah. Dia my coach. I'm really thankful to him, and I think both of us work really hard to be here.
You know, Dabita Sabri, Malaysia is behind you. Mental health is important. We've seen how Simone Biles had to pull herself out from the Olympics because of mental health. Naomi Osaka also suffering a lot when it comes to, or coping poorly when it comes to mental health. Mental health is extremely important. Malaysia is unearthing a whole host of issues when it comes to preserving good mental health. So I really hope that you find all the happiness that you can get. And for the rest of all Malaysians, if you need to talk to somebody, reach out. There's always a person out there that can help you out. That's all that we have for you for this episode of The Week Ahead. Get the latest updates on the COVID-19 information and news and vaccines on the Astro AWANI app as well as astro.com. For now, that's it from me. Have a good week ahead.